I am so excited today because I'm talking to internet dad, Rob Kenney. He's the creative mind and loving spirit behind the popular YouTube channel, Dad, How Do I?, which has over 5 million subscribers. His videos have been viewed more than 25 million times by Rob's loyal, adoring online kids, many of whom cite Rob as having had an emotionally profound impact on their lives. Rob, it's an honor and privilege to talk to you. Thank you for being generous with your time.
I am. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. It's a privilege. I still enjoy these because I think it's just nice to be able to have conversations. I always enjoyed that. With my job, I was in sales as an introvert, but I used to enjoy people because everybody's got a story. It's interesting to hear, other people's perspectives on things. I think a lot of times we don't take the time to listen. We're so busy talking, I think.
It's a pleasure. And I'm surprised to hear you say you're an introvert. I am also an introvert, and I'm sort of allergic to sales a little bit. And so, in reading about you, you've had a very successful career. So it's interesting you're an introvert and so successful in working in that capacity.
Yeah, in sales, it's not really an introvert's world, but I found I've had some great bosses that understood that it takes all types to sell to different people. And so what might sell to one person doesn't sell to the next. And so I've kind of carved out my niche and I did pretty well.
That resonates so much. I am hyper vigilant in my preparations, mainly because of that feeling that you're describing. And so I think it's really interesting, certainly at my age, where you see like the genesis of where all that comes from and people like, oh, you're so organized. And, I built a career around consulting and operations. And it's like, yeah, I just did it because I don't like the feeling of being surprised or being unprepared and being called on. So what ends up being a coping mechanism can sometimes be a gift. And sometimes our gifts can be our challenges. The show is about the challenges of change in all of its forms, especially the most important one, which I think is finding meaning and purpose in your life. And what brings me personal joy and inspiration is to talk to people like yourself who have traversed this road and are showing up in the world from a place of service and kindness. And when I first heard about you, I think it was on a podcast, I thought, oh my God, this guy is doing it. And there's so much I want to get into. But first, I want to get out of the way the question I'm sure you are always asked, first and foremost, which is around the success of your channel. And you are an extremely successful YouTuber by all definitions and metrics. And many people want to get on YouTube, social media, or even do podcasting because they want just that. They want the money, the fame, and the numbers that come with this kind of success. But that's not why you started your channel 5 years ago. You had found yourself as an empty nester and you'd raised 2 wonderful kids. And my understanding is that you were simply looking for a way where you could continue to be helpful in the next chapter of your life. If someone were to have told you in 2020 that your channel could or even would become wildly popular and you'd become famous for doing it, do you think it would have changed your approach or maybe would you have even not done it?
Those are all really good questions. I'm thankful now where I'm sitting now because it exposed a lot of my weakness. It exposed a lot of things a lot of insecurities and stuff that I had to overcome. It kind of forced me to get out of my comfort zone. If you've read anything about me or heard anything about me, I didn't want to be famous. I didn't want to change careers. I just thought I could help 30 or 40 people. I thought I was going to have this tight group and I would be able to communicate with them and kind of help mentor them. But I always felt, why was this so hard to get this information? I'd use YouTube. You'd have to watch a 20-minute video for that one nugget. Why are you doing this to me? Just give me the nugget. And so I've tried to do that. But then I've found that people want longer videos from me too, because they like hanging out with me. It's been an interesting ride. I'm grateful for the platform that I've been given. And it was scary at first seeing my name everywhere. You called me the internet dad at the beginning. That's not a name I've ever given myself. I've been called that, but I don't say, hey, I'm your internet dad. Look at me. I think that would be a little arrogant. It's just kind of a name that's been given to me. I just trying to do what I think would be helpful for people.
I love that the reason you did it was for yourself and for service without looking for anything back, right? I think that's always a really good way of dealing with the world. You're not attached to some outcome. For me, I've had a 30-year career, and then this was something that I thought, well, I love talking to people. Maybe it's somewhat indulgent, but I just thought, well, I want to do this for me, and maybe I have the handful of friends that that like to sit and have a cup of coffee and talk to me about these things. I think it's just the joy of doing it. And I'm, surprised and humbled that I have wonderful people like you who agree to do it. And that's, to me, that's sort of a gift enough. I do want to talk about your origin story. For those who don't know, I did read your wonderful book. It's titled Dad, How Do I? I really enjoyed it, and I listened to it on audio. So I had the pleasure of hearing you read it to me, which was even more personal and lovely. And I recommend everybody that they pick up this book because I feel like right now the amount of information that we're getting from all around is purposely very, very negative and intense. And I think we need to be really intentional about what we let into our environment, listening to things that make you happy or teach you something or just make you feel good. I think that's really important that we do that. And I had that experience listening to your book. And what I learned, and for our listeners, is that you grew up in Wichita, Kansas with your parents and 7 other siblings. And I just want to let you know that was my absolute dream growing up because I'm an only child. So I grew up watching the Brady Bunch, and that was my fantasy of this must be what this house is like.
Yeah, I mean, ours was all from the same mom and dad. I think a big thing that I've grappled with is birth order because I'm number 7. And so even though I'm 60, I'm still the younger brother of these older siblings. And so I think that still, some of them treat me as peers and some of them not so much. So it's interesting. I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong. It's been a blessing. I love my siblings, but there's some drawbacks too.
I'm sure the grass is always greener. And I'm sure people would think, oh, being an only child, you got all the presents and you got all the attention and all that kind of stuff. But it's also family dependent, as you and I both know. And you had, I guess, an early age, really positive memories about the family being together. And it sounded very idyllic listening to it. You're playing football and camping and all this wonderful time outdoors. But then your dad moves the family because of his job. And you guys moved to New Orleans and then eventually Washington State. And your mom's struggling with this. She's suffering from anxiety and depression, and the doctors aren't treating her. So she's self-medicating with alcohol. I think it's important for some of the younger folks today who might not realize that even in our lifetime, mental health issues were often not spoken of or are always dealt with properly, even by doctors. And we've come a long way. And now you hear people talking about it about their own journeys and having therapists. And so we've come a long way, but I think some younger folks might be surprised that it was not normal when we were growing up. And at some point, your parents' marriage starts to fray and eventually dissolves. And unfortunately, your mom's not well enough to care for you kids. So your dad gets custody, but he has a new girlfriend and he's spending most of his time with her. So you're around 12 or 13 and essentially living on your own with some of your siblings. And dad technically has custody. He's getting his mail there, but he's not there. And I found this so significant because as I'm thinking about what it was like being 12 or 13, when I was 12 or 13, it felt like the period where you're not a little kid anymore, but you're not quite a teenager. And there's all these changes happening hormonally and psychologically and socially. So you have to deal with all that normal stuff. And then on top of it, and I can relate to this, you're getting bullied at school too. And so can you remember the feelings you were having at this time? And I'm just wondering what a little 12-year-old Rob is feeling and how he's coping at that stage.
Yeah, it was difficult. I feel like it's a storm that I went through at this point. That's where I'm at. I can process it. I get a little emotional if I allow myself to, but it was tough. There was a time that I didn't even like to say my own name, Rob Kenney. My self-worth was so low. Had I been younger, I think it might have been easier. I know if I was older, it would have been easier, but I was going through puberty. And so it was a time where I was questioning my self-worth. And then I'm told, okay, you're going to foster care. You're going to live with your brother by a man that I thought was looking out for me. I say all this not to throw my dad under the bus by any means. He finished well. I forgave him. I didn't like him for the longest time and I struggled. I want to back up one thing that you said though, too, about what we fill our minds with. One of the lines I say is, I think we long for a wholesome meal, but we settle for fast food because it's easy. We long for that connection where we get to hang out or we get to play catch or we get to do something, but we get our fix from our phone, filling your mind with fast food. It's just interesting when you look back at the nostalgia of when we grew up, riding bikes and doing all that stuff. Well, you still have the choice to do that.
Yeah.
We're just making choices not to do it. And so I try to get people to recognize that. I need to go outside and play catch, and so I think there's things that we need to figure out with that. But
I love the fast food analogy. I've noticed when I've gone through periods of not eating super healthy is you get really used to it.
right.
And then when you start to get healthy, you also get used to it. And I remember I was eating very clean and no sugar, no alcohol. And then maybe it was someone's party or something. And it was like, oh, it's, have some drinks and some cake and some Doritos and all of that. And then you feel sick because you're not used to it.
Right.
I'll be on the subway and it's rush hour and everybody, 100 people on a subway, everyone's looking at their phones. Everyone's head is down. And even on the streets, which is busy and you have to kind of look out where you're walking, it's like a zombie apocalypse. But the addiction is pretty clear. Like I've noticed even in having conversations with people, what we're doing right now is really hard for people to have the attention and the focus to just sit down and see where the conversation goes. And people want that quick hit.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I didn't get on TikTok for the longest time because I don't like how it's shortening our attention span to where you just got to be entertained. And that didn't entertain me in the first 2 seconds. So I need to move on. But I finally got on there because I thought, well, maybe people can find me and then maybe look a little bit more into what I'm about. And really, I'm trying to, pass along wisdom that I hope will help the next generation or help other people. And, the channel really has resonated on a level that I never imagined. I thought I was showing people how to tie a tie, but I've got people crying watching me tie a tie. Trying to process that was difficult at the beginning. And now I kind of get it where I'm just trying to be myself and also walk alongside people. I don't think I'm that exciting, but I think it's the comfort of just hanging out with somebody.
Hey there, listeners. Quick pause for a not so boring legal note. This podcast is all about sharing stories, ideas, and a sprinkle of chaos. But remember, it's not professional advice. If you're planning to make big moves based on what you hear, chat with a lawyer, psychiatrist, accountant, or that one friend who reads the terms and conditions. We're here for the laughs and insights, not the lawsuits. Now, back to the fun stuff.
I want to tell you who you remind me of. But first, I just want to call out, there's a Japanese concept called ikigai. I talk a lot about this. People are probably like, oh gosh, here she goes again on ikigai. But it's the philosophy of how to find purpose and meaning. And it suggests that people look at doing 1, what they love, 2, what they're good at, 3, what they can get paid for, and 4, what the world needs. And as I think about you and you're building this media empire, but the product isn't the book or the YouTube channel. I think the product is you. It's Rob Kenney. And I'm going to go back to TV again. You can see as an only child, TV was my sibling, babysitter, and parent, which is why I talk about TV and movies so much. But the person you remind me of is the person who played the parental role for me, which was Fred Rogers in Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And I don't know if that resonates with you or if you saw that as a kid.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot. It's a little difficult because Mr. Rogers is one of a kind. He's very unique.
Yeah. And for those of you who don't know Mr. Rogers, Fred Rogers, one of my lifelong heroes, he also had a difficult childhood. He was bullied and lonely. He spent a lot of time by himself. There's a great documentary about his life. I think I've seen it 7 or 8 times, including twice in the theater. And then at some point as I was rewatching it, it occurred to me that he was doing the show for himself, like for his inner child, for the little Freddie, the boy who was home alone in his room after being bullied all day at school. And I think what reminds me of him and you is the love and gentleness that surrounded him. And so I was home alone from the age of 5 on. And I was also very bullied and lonely. And, there's childhood trauma happening, including a lot of neglect. And when I watched Mr. Rogers, I felt like he was talking to me. What was interesting about the show, because this is on PBS, so not like YouTube or like we all think of YouTube today, but he would address the camera like you. So it's very personal where he's talking right to you. And it's done with so much love and kindness and also patience. It was very intentional that he was very slow in thinking, and he wanted kids to learn how to regulate their emotions and their nervous system. I could feel it in my body, how calm I was when I listened to him. I want to read a quote from him, and it says, "Everyone longs to be loved, and the greatest thing we can do is to let people know that they are loved and capable of loving." And so I get very emotional talking about Mr. Rogers because he spoke to me in a way that literally no one else in my life ever had. And of course, it was what I deeply longed for. And so every time I would watch this documentary, I would not even cry, I would sob. And I'm not a crier to a fault sometimes. And so as it occurred to me while I was preparing to talk to you, that this is a similar reaction that you're getting from your internet kids. And that must feel tremendous, but also maybe, a little intimidating from a responsibility point of view, right?
Yeah. Mr. Rogers also had education that I don't have. I'm just doing the best I can and trying to pass along. But it's interesting what you brought up about that inner child. When I show how to make a pumpkin pie, I talk about it doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be perfect. You made it. And so it's great, right? I mean, to show up with a homemade pumpkin pie, the crust doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to look like it's store-bought because it's not. You made it. And there's certain things you need to make sure they're done a certain way, electricity and plumbing. You got to be careful with, but when cooking, there's a lot of leeway. You made it. It's good. And so I try to do that in my cooking videos.
There's a playfulness to that, right? And I'm going to challenge you on not being an expert. And it was true. He was an ordained Presbyterian minister, and he also studied child development. But I think you had lessons and teachings as well. They were just very personal. What I get from you is that you're enough. You're enough, and your best shot at this pumpkin pie is going to be great. It's going to be enough. There's like thousands of pumpkin pie recipes on every Google search, but there's no one out there saying it'll be okay. It's good. Just have fun with it. And that, I think, is what we all need. We have more than enough of the other stuff, and we don't have enough of people just telling us that we're enough as it is. I think I've read people come home to us and they just put your channel on because of your energy, and hearing you speak like this is so powerful. If you go back and watch Mr. Rogers' videos, you can see that he would say things over and over again in repetition. And I notice you repeat things as well, because we need that. And he would just say, "I'm so glad you're here today. I like you just the way you are." And people would make fun of him and tease him, and this is corny. But wow, how powerful is it for a kid to hear those words, especially if you're not hearing it anywhere else. And here's this resource, PBS or on YouTube, where I can tap into something that wasn't available to me or isn't available to me. And even adults now still are finding they're getting something from this, people my age.
Oh, yeah. And I always start my videos by saying, "Hey, kids." And that just kind of evolved. I didn't plan to do that. But it's funny.
And it seems it's so genuine, and it's all so authentic.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I would talk to my own kids. And so I just kind of threw that in here. And I have some that'll say, "I'm not a kid, I'm 18. And I'm like, "Yeah, you're kind of a kid." But I'll let it pass. But I have 80-year-olds that say, "I love that you're my dad," or whatever. Jokingly, it's a term of endearment.
Can I ask you about reading comments and feedback and criticism, especially maybe having a childhood like I did, being bullied or maybe some not so great experiences? It can feel very reminiscent sometimes of like the schoolyard out there.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it just feels, well, sometimes it's just plain mean and attacking, and people are just seemingly working some stuff out.
Yeah. Yeah. It can be a little bit difficult because I'm human, and you have 99 amazing comments, and then you have one, and where does your head go? Your head goes towards the one. I'm like, why am I focused on this one person that thinks I'm doing something wrong? I think you got to kind of tune out. I do try to make myself available where I want to respond to comments that make sense. And plus there's times where people are making comments. It's like somebody needs to get back to this person because they're in a desperate situation. And I try to be sensitive to that, but I am just one person. One of my favorite quotes is "The Man in the Arena" by Teddy Roosevelt. Critics are everywhere, and you just got to decide whether you're going to listen to them or not. And I I joked when I spoke last week. I said, you could hand out $100 bills on the side of the road and people would still find fault. That's just how they're wired. They just want to find fault with anything and everything. I'm sorry that your life is that miserable that you have to look at it from such a negative perspective, but I'm not going to live that way.
That's right. And it's 98% about them, right? We're all walking around and we're all thinking about ourselves most of the time, and we're projecting whatever onto other people. And
right.
Kudos to you, because it's really courageous and brave. The gift that you're giving everyone requires you to be vulnerable and authentic, but it's also putting yourself in a scary space sometimes in a vulnerable way. So we all benefit from your courage.
Well, thank you for recognizing that, because it's for sure a thing.
Yeah. Oh,
but,
yeah.
I shared that I'm a man of faith, and so I get my self-worth from the Lord, and so I'm able to, if I slow down and go, wait a second, why are you letting this bother you? It's not a big deal. Just keep doing what you're. And I think when my channel first went viral, scared me to death. And then I'm like, wow, why? This wasn't planned. There was no foundation built. We didn't know what we were doing. I really feel like the Lord wanted me to love people. I think that was my responsibility more so than, so I say, God bless you at the end, but I don't get preachy. I'm open about my faith, because I think if I didn't share that, I think I'd be doing a disservice to people, because it changed me. It changed who I am and how I see life and how I understand and how I process things. Without the Lord, I would be a wreck.
Well, this is another area that I think you and Mr. Rogers have in common. He was an ordained Presbyterian minister, and faith was central to his life. And I think the way I experience both of you is that you're an embodiment of your faith, right? I feel like you speak about your faith, but I don't experience you as preachy or judgmental in any way. And I don't see you using it as like a label or a self-identifier. I experience you as practicing versus preaching. In Buddhism, there's a quote which says, don't be a Buddhist, be a Buddha. As a Christian, you're demonstrating it. You're not talking about doing these things, you're doing them, and you're sharing that love, which is the message, is love and caring and helping others, especially people who need it. At its core, you're walking around in service to others in a really loving and kind way, and it just feels good. It doesn't matter where someone else is coming from. I feel like you're doing it the way it should be done.
I'm trying to. I like that saying. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I think it was on a commercial recently, so it kind of ruined it. I was like, oh, I've always loved that. Now you're turning it into a slogan. I feel like I've been given the platform to be able to share. I don't think it's my responsibility to force anything on anybody, but I'm happy to talk through why I'm at where I am, where I'm at.
Something else you said in the book I want to bring up, and that's the quote, hurt people hurt people. And that certainly resonated with me. In my experience, hurt people either become hurtful people, or they might become steadfast and never becoming like the person who hurt them. And this was the road I think you took, and it's certainly the one I did, where I was like, I don't ever want to be that way. I'm just wondering how the process around letting some of that go. I know you've been very generous in the book about it, your difficult early childhood and where you are today. There's this messy middle. And I think in terms of personal transformation or any kind of change, we often gloss over the challenges of that. It's not as fun. It's like, oh, it was this and now it's this, and this is really great. But there was a long period where you were dealing with, you were talking about self-esteem, and I don't know if there was self-blame or other things there, but that process took some years to work through, right?
Oh, it absolutely did. Yeah. And I share in the book that unforgiveness of my dad, I think, was a big thing holding me back. And so that's why anytime I have a message, I try to work in forgiveness, because I think we think it's about the other person, and really it's killing you. You're drinking poison, hoping it hurts the other person. I like that quote that says, forgiveness is setting a prisoner free and realizing the prisoner was you. I came up with an acronym. It's LIFE, L-I-F-E. The L was to learn as much as you possibly can. I was individual gifts. We each have gifts that we've been given. And a lot of times we'll sit and wish we had other people's gifts instead of being grateful for the gift that you have, that you can share with somebody, but we long for what other people have. And boy, that comes so easy to them. Well, and it doesn't come easy to you, but other things come easy to you that don't come easy to them. And so it's just interesting how we tend to compare to each other. So that was it. Learn individual gifts. F was forgiveness, of course. And the E was embrace the journey. I like that John Lennon quote that says, life is what happens while we're making other plans.
Yeah.
Because we're all like that. We're all wired like that. What are you doing tomorrow? Let's enjoy what we're doing right now.
You're touching on is so important, presence, and how much we lose when we're not being present. I was on the train the other day and I was listening to a podcast, flipping through a magazine, and periodically answering text messages. And at one point I stopped myself and I was like, what am I doing? I deleted all the social media apps from my phone because I was noticing I couldn't even wait for a train for 5 minutes. I was just standing there. It felt intolerable.
Yeah.
I had a similar background to you. I think I was baptized Catholic, and then I was raised Reformed church, and then I ended up really gravitating toward Buddhism. It's something that really connected to me. I was in college, and I had to work full time and go to school full time. And I remember the first summer where I didn't have to do both, and it was like a Saturday, so I didn't have to do anything on a Saturday. And I woke up and I felt panicked. I was really almost having a panic attack, and I didn't know why. And it was because I just had to sit there in my own skin. And I just thought, I don't think it's a good thing that I am having a panic attack for just having to sit with myself. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of where we're at now is just built on us not paying attention. And we lose so much. We just lose so many clues about the world around us. We're not paying attention to the beauty of nature, the body language of other people. Even though you mentioned you're part of social media, the fact that people want longer videos also seems really positive. People are enjoying spending time with you. They're not just looking for the funny TikTok video.
Yeah. I would say, in fairness, I think those unfortunately are few and far between, meaning I think there's more people that are looking to be entertained than people that actually, boy, I wish you'd make longer videos, because I think they get it. They understand that I'm trying to walk alongside you and spend some quality time together. Don't swipe away just because I don't have the fancy video equipment like other people might have. But people do it. It's that dopamine hit. This is boring. I can't just sit here. Wow. But we're hanging out together, aren't we? We're kind of hanging out. And some people get it. I don't think enough people get it. And maybe they will one day, that they'll understand. And I've said this about Mr. Rogers. I think Mr. Rogers wasn't really appreciated until he was gone.
Yeah. I feel like there's going to be this counter correction. Jonathan Haidt has had this movement to try to get schools to take phones out of schools and do some age gating around social media. But you said something earlier, which is we all have a choice. We have a choice whether it's at the beginning of the year with a New Year's resolution or on a Sunday to just say maybe the whole family is going to do, no phone Sunday or something. I've been using the focus on my phone just to try to put some guardrails on all of this.
Maybe start out with a half an hour and say, hey, let's have dinner together. Put the phones in the other room and we're just going to connect with each other, and then maybe push it to an hour, we need to connect. It's just not healthy.
Hope you're enjoying the show. If you are, please subscribe so new episodes find you, and share the show with other deep thinkers in your life. And if you're saying to yourself, damn, I don't have people in my life that I can talk to about this kind of stuff, don't worry, now you do.
I want to switch gears and go back to the kinds of videos you're doing. Your first video was how to tie a tie. I don't know if you got feedback on tie a tie, but that's such a great thing. That if you didn't have a dad, like how do you ever learn how to tie a tie? But then since then, you've produced so many different kinds of videos. You have household tasks and personal accounting, organization, cooking, as you said. And what's really important is that a lot of these life skills aren't formally taught anymore.
Right.
In your book, you talk about empowerment and support. And I think for many people, for one reason or another, they never learned how to change a tire or a water filter. But over time, your topics broadened. And so now you have videos entitled, You Can't Always Get What You Want, and Juggling Priorities in Your Life. What was that process like? Was that conscious, where things sort of evolved out of being more tactical, or was it the feedback you were getting? And how did it go from tires and filters?
I tried to do both. Grateful for the ability to share wisdom, because I think that that's important. You got to share your heart with your kids. Dad is more than just Mr. Fix It. Share your heart with your kids. I'm grateful. I told my daughter early on when I first did this, I said, I don't want it to be just a how-to. I talk to my kids all the time. So they still have questions about things, and we walk through decision making. My daughter's dealing with a lot of decisions right now. She's actually producing a film. It's kind of cool, but she has lots of questions. Not that I know the answers to them, but I can help her process the decision making part of it. I had one person, I did a video, and then at the end said, it was just a short video on something, I can't remember, and then at the end said, God bless you. And this lady said, I really love this information, but I can't share it because it says God bless you at the end. I'm like, oh my goodness, really? Okay. I guess.
I mean, that's who needs to look inward. What's going, my dad would say, cutting off your nose to spite your face. As I'm listening to you about the tactical kinds of things, I mean, two things come to mind. One is, it is an act of love to teach someone how to do something and empower them. And so as a child who, was alone a lot, and, I was raised by my dad. Dad did the best he could, but he didn't have any experience with teenage girls. Emotional intimacy was so hard for him. Sometimes I'd get those conversations while he was doing fix-it stuff. Like that was a good cover, or bowling. He was a big bowling guy. And so I started to bowl just so we'd have something to do on a Sunday morning. We'd go in the bowling alley, opened up. We'd play a bunch of games. And then there would be like little moments of intimacy in between frames, or, I'd do something and he'd correct my posture. And then he'd go, so, how's that new job? And what's with that boyfriend? And, and then we'd go back to bowling. And it was a nice way of kind of broaching some deeper stuff.
Yeah, I think, there was a big thing years ago about quality time over quantity time. But I think a lot of quality time happens from quantity time, just hanging out and stuff coming naturally rather than getting a lecture. I got to sit you down and tell you what you need to know. That never goes over very well. I think we've all tried it, but it doesn't work near as well as just experiencing life together and then stuff comes up.
I think that's where you can learn emotional intelligence. You're putting something together and frustrated. I think it's an opportunity for the other person to patience and how to interact with others. I mean, that's a pretty critical life skill that I think comes through.
I got to give credit where credit's due. My brother, Rick, the one that took me in, he was only 23 at the time, and his wife, she was 24. He was a journeyman cabinet maker. And I got to spend a lot of time with him on different things.
Yeah.
Where you hang out with somebody that really, really knows something, they don't really sweat the small stuff. They just because they've seen it before. I've seen that. Okay, yeah, we just do this. Oh, yeah, let's see. What can we do? And they kind of, think through it as a puzzle. And they don't get flustered. The tricky thing as a dad is you're kind of expecting to know a lot of things. And that's why you get a lot of people saying, hold the flashlight. No, hold the flashlight. And he's mad. He's mad probably because he's frustrated that he doesn't know what he's doing. I think that's a big thing. And he's putting the pressure on himself that he wishes he knew how to do it. I think a big thing is going back and asking for forgiveness, though. I think that was a big thing. I'd always try to go back and say, listen, I did not handle that very well, and I'm sorry. I'm trying my best, so I hope you understand that that's where I'm coming from. And a lot of times that would come through in prayer time at night when we would pray. I just kind of confess that I failed today. Help me to do better, and that's my goal, is to try to be the best parent that I could be. I'm not going to be perfect.
But that's another amazing life skill, right? Is the rupture repair process. That was something that certainly in my family was never modeled. No one knew how to do that. It's okay to fight or to get frustrated or whatever. And then this is how we process it and we talk about it and we ask for forgiveness or apologize or whatever. And that's a gift because that's going to just happen throughout our whole lives. I think when you've had maybe childhoods like it sounds like you and I have had, emotional regulation can be a challenge. And even if you're putting together a cabinet and it's not working, sometimes you react a little more intensely than maybe the situation calls for, but it's coming from some other places. I think, and this is what you bring in your videos, which is it's okay. It's okay to struggle. It's okay if this is a little crooked or maybe it's not okay. And you talk about that. But I think that having one person that can regulate themselves like you do is really great when you're the other person, whether it be a child or one of your internet kids listening, who's maybe not feeling emotionally regulated. And I think when you grow up in environments where both mom and dad maybe don't know how to do that, and you're a kid learning how to do that yourself, that's really hard. You need some stable energy in the room to model off of an anchor off of. I have a funny story from when I was in Sunday school. My teacher, her name was Ginny Cook. And the reason I knew it was Ginny Cook was I must have heard my parents talk about her first name, because little kids don't call adults by their full name. And I found loud and crowded environments very overstimulating. So I was in Sunday school and there's all these little 5-year-old kids running around and screaming. And Ginny Cook would tell the story well into my 30s and 40s. She'd say, "You were this little girl, Mary, and you turned to me in Sunday school and you said, 'Ginny Cook, shut these screaming kids up.'" And she told the story very lovingly about this little precocious kid. But as I was reflecting on it, I guess there's two things. One, as a 5-year-old little girl, I was really not okay. It felt very unsafe and chaotic, that environment. And two, she was so healthy and emotionally regulated herself that she wasn't screaming at all the kids, like, frankly, I wanted her to. And she was able just to hold a kind of space for me and just be kind of calm. And that's a great lesson for all of us, because if we're all freaking out, right, it doesn't go anywhere constructive.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I get emails and stuff from people all the time. And this one woman wrote me and she said, "I'm about your age." And she said, and I think she has 6 kids. Maybe she might be a little bit younger than me, but she said her dad never smiled and her dad wouldn't even let her smile. And she said she would, I don't want to get too into detail out of respect for her, but she said that her dad even broke her jaw by smacking her across the face because she was smiling. He said, "Wipe that smirk off your face." So she said, just seeing me smile means the world to her, because I kind of naturally smile. I think everybody likes to be around people that smile. So I try not to take a lot of things too seriously. Certainly not perfect by any means, like I said, but I think a smile can go a long way. It's just comforting to people.
It is. Well, thank you. I want to be respectful of your time. I want to wrap up with a segment I call the Protagonist Questionnaire, and it's inspired by the French journalist Bernard Pivot and the wonderful late James Lipton from the Actor Studio. And so it's just a bunch of fun questions to get to know you a little bit better. What person or person first showed you your own power?
Aside from Jesus, I guess, my brother Rick was instrumental in my life.
What film do you find most inspiring?
It's a Wonderful Life.
Me
I love
too.
It's a Wonderful Life. I watch that every year, even
Same.
if nobody else wants to watch it. I'll watch it by myself, even though I know the outcome, and it's hard to watch.
And I still cry.
Uncle Billy give the money to Potter. You have to go through those cringy moments. I've said that about my own life, because it's tough talking about some of the stuff in my own life, but that's what makes the end so amazing. If I didn't have that muddy garbage in the middle, the end wouldn't be as glorious.
Absolutely. What song do you play to psych yourself up?
Dare You to Move is a great song by Switchfoot. Just,
okay.
Encouraging you to get out there and do something.
What's your favorite comfort food?
Pizza, probably. I don't know. I like Chipotle too.
Classic.
Yeah.
What do you do to unwind, self-soothe, or remind yourself not to take life too seriously?
That'd be my quiet time, I guess. Reading the Bible, and Psalms are always comforting.
What sound fills your heart with joy?
I would say worship.
What is your spirit animal?
I don't know.
Do you have any pets?
I love dogs. I love my dog, and she's so loyal and just so happy to see me. She follows me. I'm her person. She stares at me everywhere I go, and I go in the garage and it's cold and I'm working out, and she wants to just sit there and stare at me.
What is your favorite quote? I know you have a lot of them.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, if it can be a long one, it would be The Man in the Arena, because that's spoken to me so much, because the credit belongs to the people that are actually in the arena. Anybody can be a critic. If you're actually putting yourself out there, give yourself credit, because not everybody does that, because they don't want to be criticized, and so they'll hang back. Well, you're putting yourself out there. Give yourself credit for that.
Absolutely. And finally, how do you wish to be remembered?
I've had to process this a lot, I think, over the past several years and talking about leaving a legacy and stuff. And I really, really landed on, I'd like to be a man after God's own heart. I'm just trying to do the best I can with the abilities that I feel like I've been given. And so when I hear that David was a man after God's own heart, it's like, boy, that would be a pretty cool thing. That's what I'm just, I'm failing all the time. Don't hold up to that, doing the best that I can, but that would be the ultimate goal.
Well, that's certainly how I experience you. We are living in difficult times and many people are struggling. Mr. Rogers famously said, quote, "When I was a boy, I would see scary things in the news and my mother would say to me, 'Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping.'" And Rob, I think you are one of those people. You are helping so many people, literally millions. I want to thank you for living with integrity and inspiring all of us through your example. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.